Curtis A reached out to me, said make a theme song for my show. Said alright, just give me all the details, man. And my homie says he don't know. Well, if you're gonna pay me big bucks, guess I might should have something to say. He said, you know what I bring, I'm the customizing king, nothing else matters anyway. So is he gonna have guests? I don't know. Is he gonna go live? I don't know. What time will it be? What will you see? I'm pretty much in the dark, but I can guarantee he'll be customizing action figures, getting paint all on his fingers. It's art by Akerman. It's art by Akerman. Tips and tricks and conversation, sharing his gift with every nation. It's art by Akerman. Art by Akerman. You best get ready, cause now it's time for Art by Akerman.
All right, folks, welcome back to another How'd They Do That video. I just want to take a moment real quick to thank all the different artists that have taken their time to come on this segment, because it would be real easy for people to just be like, no, that's my trade secret. That's the thing that makes me me. And I don't want to share that with folks, because I don't need two of me out there, that kind of thing. But that's not what I hear. All the time, folks come on here, they're willing to share their tips and tricks and just kind of thought process. And I've even had a few people tell me that they wanted to be on here because often they have to explain something, when we talk about like their style of doing something, they have to explain it individually to people at shows and all this and that. And it just takes a lot of time. And so this is an easy way for them to just send them a video link and say, hey, this is how I do it, and take a look and let me know what you create. So I just want to take a moment to thank everybody that's done this segment. I got another great artist with us here today, and it's one that I've been waiting to talk to on this segment for a while. It's kind of like when you watch the Doctor Strange movie for the first time and all the buildings start spinning around and everything's like super trippy, and you're like, I don't know what's going on, or what the person that made this, what the heck they were thinking. Like, this is just like crazy. That's what I feel like when I watch and look at this artist's work. And it is the one and only Nate Armstrong. Nate, how you doing, sir?
I'm great. I am great, Curtis. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, I'm so ready to just take a trip through your brain real quick. So this is going to be fun.
How far back do you want to go?
I pulled up some photos of some things that you've created over the last couple of years. And I think, each time I have an artist on, I try to figure out like what is that thing that really separates them and they're known for. It could be like one specific custom, could be a style of paint job or whatever it is. And for you, it's like just your vision on how you see things and how you use parts in ways that I and most people wouldn't have thought to use. So that's kind of what I focused on with these slides. So let's just get this thing up and we'll start taking a look. So for the teaser image, the thumbnail that I use this guy that you just recently finished. And this is a what are we looking at here?
I think if I wanted to call it anything, it would be an ice giant or
an ice giant. Okay.
Yeah.
So tell us, like, how does this start? Like a project like this, do you know it's going to look like this at the end, or have an idea or are you just starting to mess around with things and it comes together? Like how does this go about?
This goes. All right, I was thinking about this on my drive back from dropping off the kids, that this starts in kindergarten.
Oh, okay.
I don't see very well. I am very nearsighted. And so early on, shapes became very important to me. Like if I could figure out a way to rearrange shapes or see whole block shapes, then I could maybe translate it to what was written on the board.
Okay.
And yeah, it's like I was never diagnosed with mild dyslexia, but I think that's what it's partially that, partially the blindness. But lucky me, when you're painting, it's a foot away from you. I can still see the details, but so it starts with shapes, right? And in this case, it's just I needed a part off of a horse at one point, and then once I had removed that part and I started flipping the horse around, because I'm so accustomed to looking at shapes themselves and not the details. If I flip something upside down and suddenly I see a mouth where there should be a butt, then now I'm onto something, right? I can take it from there. So no, I did not know this was going to look like this when I started. And when I started, it was the fire troll with the single eyeball.
Okay.
That I was working with. And then I knew in order to make it work, like many artists, I have my group of friends that I share my ideas with. And Len and Pat were like, neat, Nate, throwing they were like, cool. Cause they couldn't see it yet with inconsistent colors.
Right.
But I can, because I'm not looking at that yet. I'm looking at the shapes.
Right.
And so I tried. I mean, I had some of the old bird talons in there for hands for a while instead, which was even creepier. But then he doesn't have any he can't grab anything at that point.
So a lot of experimentation and just putting things together and see what looks right, what doesn't look right.
Yeah, after the giggle, right? Like first I do something, I giggle.
Yeah.
And then I start to swap the parts out.
Gotcha. Okay. So it starts with maybe kind of an idea, but you don't know what the finished product's going to be like. Start kind of messing around with things, looking at the shapes of things, what makes sense. Cause so on this one, you've got a horse body backwards, right? His front is actually the back of the horse.
Yeah.
And then you've got like this really strange thing going on the arms. So what? Tell us what is this?
I loved how creepy it looked. Where we're not all built the same way, and you even have some humans that have some spinal issues or whatever, and they'll kind of take on this slumped shoulder or even raised shoulder look to them. And I just loved how the musculature still worked this way. And then the arms were useless with only one set of horse legs. So
okay.
So because I had been sent a bunch of horse bodies in my quest to make something else that I need a bunch of horse tails for, I just had tons and tons of horse bodies to mess with, ripped off more legs and just started adding them. So those are all just horse legs on the arms until I got to.
So it's like the horse, it's the front horse legs, right? And then it's
up top,
the upper part, and then the lower part of the horse leg with the lower part of the horse leg with the lower part of the horse leg into a 2.0, or is that 1.0?
It's a 1.0 Lord Dragul
leg with a hand in it.
With a hand in it. Yep.
Awesome.
Because that's what works, right? Like you have certain parts that have a port and certain parts that have a peg. And there are very few double port parts. And there are very few well, actually, no, that's not true. There are more double peg parts than there are double port parts.
Okay.
So sometimes you're going to have to drill in order to make something work. And sometimes it's fun tack, or if I really like a thing, like I will probably green stuff the we'll call it the wrist, just so the hand fits in there better. But right now it's Fun Tack.
Okay. All right. And then we see him over here next to an ice troll, which is a big figure like that. The ice troll's, 12-inch figure, and this thing towers over top of it. So it just kind of gives people an idea of, kind of scale on this. And I love the fur piece, really kind of brings it all together, in my opinion. Like it does feel like a finished figure. Like you look at with Cosmic Legions, they got that oh man, I can't think of his name now. The kind of dwarfy, stocky ox crew guy with the big green head. You know what I'm talking about? Anyway, like this gives me that vibe. Like it feels like this could be a horseman figure, like in Cosmic Legions, which is really cool. Like anytime that you can make a wild, scary, nightmare fuel creation that also feels like it could be part of the line, like that's pretty freaking awesome.
Yeah, and I say this often, that my paint work is not the best in our circle. It's fine and it's passable, and a lot of people are able to really just take a mythic figure and make the paint work. Even because they don't have a budget, right? They can do whatever they want, so it sometimes can be even better than off the factory line. And that's not my skill set. So thank you. If I can get it close enough to studio production look, then I am happy.
Well, I mean, certainly, you're no schlub when it comes to painting. It's not like, I remember 2 years ago at Legion's Con, you had that slog with the eyeball, and I was like, it just looked like, I don't know, like it looked like a real eyeball. It had this like sparkle to it, and the colors were done really well. So, I mean, you definitely have amazing paint skills, but there's people that's all they do. And that it's kind of like, if you play the guitar or you play tennis or whatever, and that's all you do, you're going to get pretty freaking great at it.
Right.
But you don't just paint, like you do these, I don't even know what you would call this, like construction work. Like, I don't know. It's like, it's really interesting the way that you put all this stuff together. And it reminds me of something that Emil told me last year that just kind of unlocked a little something in my brain, which was, I was working on that Oliphant figure.
Yep.
And he said, what I do when I'm working on tribute figures is I try to get the overall silhouette of the thing. So when he said that, I think what that meant to me was the same thing what you said, which is you're looking at the shape of something. So a shield isn't a shield is a circle, right? And if I need a circle, that gives me that shape, and that kind of thing. So I think it's interesting because you and him both do some really kind of outside the box, utilizing parts in ways that people don't normally use. And to hear you both kind of talk about like the shape of things, like don't think of this as this thing, think of it as that shape. And is that similar to the shape if it's maybe the exact shape you need? And if it is, great. If it's similar to the shape you need, then that's when you can kind of do some little X-Acto knife hacking or some green stuff or whatever and kind of get there. So beautiful.
That's the process. Yeah. I guess we call them giggles. We'll call them giggles because that's what they do.
Sounds good. So next, this thing, which okay. Okay, so this is like the beginning stages. Like we got the finished pictures on this, but okay. So I see you're using some green stuff here. This is obviously using a horse body as well,
right?
But you're using like, is that a leg for a foot that we've got down there? Is that
oh yeah. I've forgotten I had done that. That is an ogre, or a half giant,
lower leg.
Yeah, shin as a foot.
And then you've taken the bottom of the hooves and made eyeballs out of it.
Which required some green stuff, right? Like,
and but the opening where that neck peg from the horse comes out, and have just made a huge mouth.
Yeah.
So tell us, like, what? Yeah, well, who hurt you that made you come up with this?
So this was the first horse monstrosity that I ever did, and it was exactly that. I flipped it up, and in a frenzy, I was definitely working on something else. And all of these ideas happen when I'm supposed to be working on somebody's pretty normal custom.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
All of them. So I think I had taken an Airfus torso off and needed that for something. And then I was left with this body, and I was like, oh man, what am I gonna do with this? And I was just flopping it around. And I saw it. I saw the shape, and I think I was like, what happens if I spin the legs? That was the origin.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, I've got this weird thing. What happens if I spin the legs? Oh, okay, those kind of look like stalks, like if you ripped somebody's eyeball out.
Yeah.
So it kind of looks like that, but I could add some. All right, I'm feeling this now. This definitely looks like a mouth. And I added the goblin neck piece, the collar. I cut that so that I could make it longer, and made that the teeth. And then I really felt it. I was like, okay, now this is a creature. Before when
I saw the finished product, I didn't realize that you used a goblin neck piece there. I thought you just sculpted that. And that, once again, just seeing the shape of it, like you look at that goblin neck piece, and it's a neck piece with spikes on it, right? And you look at it and you go, that could easily be teeth. And it
absolutely.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yep.
So this is kind of, so like, this is like, we see this, like you post this and I go, oh, he sculpted all of those teeth. No, that's a neck piece that you've put in, repurposed, painted, put some extra green stuff around it. But I mean, this thing is just, this is unique. Like, this is not, you see a lot of folks do stuff in the Cabal where they'll do some pop and swap, or they'll repaint a certain head to match a certain body, and then you see like 3 or 4 people do the same thing. Nobody's doing this. Nobody. This is not something that I'm seeing. 5 people do yet. Yeah. So just kind of interesting, and then the fact that like the whole lower ogre shins for the feet, like why ogre shins for the feet? How did that come to be?
Frustration. A lot of this comes out of frustration, right? Like there isn't a foot that will go in there. And then of course I've used an ogre for something else, and I'm left with these shins, and I've got these parts. And I just, I've got my messy art room with stuff all around me. And I just start grabbing parts and going, okay, what can I jam on there? And again, what makes me giggle? And then,
so you, like, people, I've heard people that are explaining Mythic Legions to people, will say like, well, it's like action figures that are also like Lego, like you can just pop and swap and put them together. But when they say that, they still in their mind are thinking an arm's an arm that goes on a different figure. You're thinking Lego, like you've got excess parts, they're in a pile, and it doesn't matter that the instructions said that this part goes here to build a Death Star. To you, that brick is a brick and it can be used anywhere, right?
Yeah, that is how I view Mythic. I will always just build the Death Star with Legos. I strictly adhere to the directions when I'm doing Legos, and I get very frustrated when somebody's like, let's take it apart and build something weird.
But with Mythic, it's all fair game. It's going into a pile and then coming up with something like this.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say on this piece, unless you have other questions,
you're good,
is then the idea, once I started going with this, is it reminded me a lot of those Yep Yeps from Sesame Street. And
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
So I was going to just do it all in red or all in blue. And then I was like, no, this thing is creepy. What would make it creepier is if it was flesh toned. And it is like, I'm going to do a couple more of these spoilers.
I love that there's like even, well, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but like coming from the top of the mouth towards the eye stalks, I guess we'll call them. It looks like there's like veininess that you've included in there. Like it's just, I mean, you've really, not only the sculpt and just the fact that it's got these eyes that are kind of twisted and turning and looking at you in this big giant mouth, but then even with the paint job, you've added creepiness.
Yeah. And is it weird that like, that's what makes me laugh?
I mean, as long as I don't see this thing when I first open my eyes in the morning, I'm good. Like, so, I did want to, let me in small us real quick. I just wanted to share something. I wasn't even planning on doing this, but just from our conversation. So like this is a figure that I completed for that, Oliphant, setup this past year. And never would have done this had it not been for talking to Emil, because I saw, and I really want to focus on that like contraption on his back.
Yeah.
In the movie, they're wearing this big thing behind them, right? And I'm like, I don't even know what this is, like some sort of standard or something that they're wearing. I don't know if it's for intimidation purposes or if it's a rank thing. I don't know. And I'm sure there's somebody out there that's like super into the Lord of the Rings lore that's shouting in the comments right now, you freaking idiot, it's this, whatever. But I'm looking at this thing and I go, okay, if I'm going to represent this guy, because this is the driver of the Oliphant, and you can't have the Oliphant not have a driver, right? So I'm like, if I'm going to represent this, how do I do that? Like, how do I create this thing that doesn't exist in Mythic Legions? And so I started looking at it and I was like, well, it's got like these parts in the back that curve across, right? And I'm like, I don't have that piece, but I do have like arrows, right? I got like bows and arrows. And so I took like a long bow and put it at the top, and then I put a crossbow underneath. So you kind of get that curved shape on there, right?
Yep.
And then for the middle part, I took a dwarf shield and I cut the sides off, and then put like a tabard piece, that like the loin piece for the people that have the tabards, and I put that on there and then just painted it up. And you can't see on this picture on the Lord of the Rings shot, but he's got like a little kind of eagle thing on top of it or something. And I was like, well, I've got those head toppers from Mythic Legions kind of go into the helmets, and put that on there. So, and a lot, and then the little spike things that are going up and down, those are just axe handles that I just kind of carved into like spike things. So it was very much using parts in ways that they're not intended to be used, but only because it has the shape that I was looking for, which really goes back to kind of what Emil was saying with the silhouette, and what you're saying about seeing the shape is that this is no longer a long bow, this is just a curved shape. And this is no longer an axe handle, it's just a wooden spiky thing. So
and you did the same thing with your Def Leppard drum tribute. That whole kit. Yeah, like that's all Mythic parts. Right. You're talking to me as though what I'm doing is different, but you're already doing it.
It is, because until middle of last year, I didn't do any of that. I'm very much at the early stage of being able to kind of see these shapes that you're talking about. But for you, it's something like you said that you've been doing since childhood. So it's like second nature. And I think for Emil, it's something that he's grown used to. So I'm just now unlocking this part of my brain. And I still think it's absolutely amazing. And I'm hoping that somebody that watches this goes, oh my goodness, I never would have thought to see these things this way. And they create something cool and tag us in it. And we go, that made it worth it. Right.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I did have a few more photos here that I wanted to show. Let me go here. Okay. I had to pull this up.
Yeah.
Because long before there was the Ninian, and that kind of thing, you made this snake, and I don't even know, like the amount of parts that you've used here that are not meant to be those parts. So in your brain, do you go, I'm going to make a snake because I knew you were doing this series, right? You're doing a series of these characters and you go, how would I do this character? And then you just start playing. Is that kind of how this goes?
Absolutely. And, again, I send stuff to Patrick Boyle and Len LaGuardia and say, all right, this is where I'm headed. And sometimes I get an enthusiastic response. And then when I don't, I go, all right, either they just don't get me or
it's so complicated.
and I press on, or I go, okay, I think they're right. Like they're not seeing the shape yet. Maybe the shape isn't there. With Hiss, like, you have to ask yourself when you're doing these, how much do I care about scale? And I usually do care about scale a lot. And so for Hiss, that would have meant taking a cattail and putting a head on it that I probably was going to have to sculpt myself. And my sculpting is not the thing I spent the most time working on.
There you go.
And so it's playing with parts, and it's the what if and frustration. It always is born of frustration. So
tell us what we have here, because I see a torso or two. I see a bunch of arms and maybe legs. Tell us.
It's
what we got.
2 goblin torsos, one flipped upside down.
Okay.
And then that gives you the neck hole peg or port that you can
put an arm into as a neck.
You can jam a leg in there. You can, and that's what I think. Most of those are upper arms, and it's
which
been a
also
long
allows you to do this, like where you're curving the tail. Like you've still got articulation points. This isn't something that you've sculpted some solid piece that can only be in one shape. Like this thing actually moves and can twist itself into snake-like shapes.
Yeah, he poses pretty nicely. And you can, you saw the photos, you can lay him down, you can pop him up. And there were a lot of arms and legs in there. I can't remember how many, but a lot.
And the other thing I'd like to just point out for the folks, this is not for the faint of heart. Okay. Like I know sometimes people will, especially when they first get into this community, they're like, wow, he's charging what for a custom kind of thing. First of all, there's a lot of years and hours that go into these things to build up the skill to do something like this. But then on top of this, like how many figures are you tearing apart to come up with the parts to use this? And then you're left with all these other pieces that you're going to have to try to figure out what to do with for some other thing. Like the amount of carnage that is created to make something like this is just off the charts.
And then, you destroy a lot of pieces too, because the what if question where you're like, okay, I think this is going to work, but I won't know until I cut it in half.
Yeah.
And try it. And then you cut it in half and it doesn't work. So, and then you have to say, well, was that my fault? Is that the end buyer's fault? It's that I needed to do that in order to get there. And
I think, it's just one thing that I always want to make sure that people understand is that, I don't think anybody, in fact, I know nobody that is at Legion's Con selling their customs is getting rich off this stuff, right?
No.
In fact, I would say most customizers probably aren't even breaking even on this stuff. But they're having fun and they're sharing their art with the world. And if they can get a little bit of money back that helps them to further their creations and further their hobby, that's kind of what it's about. But just something to keep in mind, because like something like this, that's a lot of
this one was hours of experimentation. I did sculpt a head for this. It was trash, but I had to do it to know that it wasn't going to work. And it's part of that. When I first got into Mythic Legions, it was going to shows, seeing the giant line of people, and then being like, what is this all about? And then I dipped my toes in, and then I saw the aftermarket prices, and I was like, oh, this could be a good business model. I go to these shows. I don't know any of these people. I can buy the figures and flip them for twice what they're actually worth. And I did that for about one cycle. And then in that cycle, I joined the Cabal, and I was like, oh, I feel dirty. And so I stopped doing that immediately. And some of that plays into the pricing when you go to a show too, where I'm just like, you're my friends. I wanted to do this just so that I could prove that it could be done. Like, I had the idea in my head to do this character. The itch was there.
Itch, and you got to scratch it.
And until I scratch it, I'm not happy. But once I do, I'm done with it.
Yeah, like, you don't need to keep it. I don't need to own this. I just needed to see that it could be done, kind of thing.
Yep.
Well, got a couple more. So you got one that was at Legion's Con this year with the whale there, and then another one that you just recently created. You know, a couple different things going on here. I mean, obviously that one, the whale troll. I know that head was sculpted, but then you had to kind of figure out, okay, yeah, I got a head, but how do I make the rest of this? So tell us a little bit about how that went.
Yeah, I mean, even just getting the fact that Brian seeded that for me, and then he waited for ages for what is there on the right as his thank you gift. It's just amazing. Like, he really hooked me up. But this came from when I was trying to figure out the name for my art tag. And I was like, well, I do creepy stuff. I was thinking Telltale Art Customs, but I'm not always referencing literature. Yeah. And Pat was like, yeah, you do. You're always referencing literature. I was like, nah, I did Winnie the Pooh. And he's like, those were books first. And I was like, yeah, they were. And I read them. And, we went through that for a little bit, and I was like, it's not like I ever did Moby Dick. And I was just like, oh, damn.
There you go.
Moby Dick. So this is like, it took 2 years to get a head made in order to do this. So that itch was just on me for 2 years. And then the hands, I can't remember who said, it might have actually been Brian, suggested I play with the polymer beads. They're these beads that you just drop in hot water, and then they become malleable. And that's how I did the fins. But there's also, you can't see it in that shot, but on the elbows are the Hellfire Goblin helmet.
Gotcha.
To give him like some spiny elbows.
So some sculpt work, some partnering with 3D sculptors and just kind of bringing that to life.
Yeah.
That's cool. I love that you've got a good mix of kind of your own wild creations out of your brain that just make people not be able to sleep at night. And then you've got these other like tribute things that people see and they go, oh my goodness, that's whatever. That's Robin Hood. That's, some Disney character. That's Moby Dick, like, all this kind of stuff. It's just a nice mix of the two, in my opinion.
Thanks. Fireworm.
Yeah. So like the first thing I want to point out, like so I'm looking at this and I see the thing that hits my bank account is all these Sphexian tails. I'm like 1, 2, 3, 4, like, holy cow, that is a lot of Sphexian tails.
Yeah, and that is the community. That's me putting out a call. And there were some trades, but there's a lot of people just being like, I want to see what you want to do with 12 Sphexian butts.
And that is a good point. I'm glad that we got to that, because yeah, there's some times where I think who was it? Matt Stein just recently was threw out a thing to the cabal like looking for Jacob Marley boots, and you'll get somebody that, hey, I need 7 of this thing, and obviously I don't want to tear apart 7 figures. Like, does anybody have these for available for trade or whatever? But when I was doing that Oliphant, I needed an extra set of troll legs. And, because I was going to make the front arms, I was going to turn the arms into legs basically. And I could have just torn apart another troll and used the legs. But then I've got an entire troll that, I have nothing to do with, which could have become some other weird Nate Armstrong creation. But
yeah,
I just reached out and I into the community. I said, hey, anybody have a set of troll legs? Maybe they, put some 3D printed legs on there or did something else with a troll body and they've got an extra set of legs. And Perry Morrell Jr. came to my aid and he said, hey, I got some troll legs, let me know. And he, we'd kind of worked out a trade and stuff, but sometimes people will just trade you parts. Sometimes they'll just send it to you free of charge and, or give you a good deal on it. And that's what the community is about. It's like you said, sometimes they just want to see what you're going to come up with. And it's just a really neat community. Cause like, I can't even imagine going into like the G.I. Joe world on one of their boards and be like, does anybody have 5 Ripper heads?
Yeah.
like that you would get kicked out so fast. Like you'd be done. Yeah, but this is yeah. So first of all, just the amount of parts on this, and then like the thought process to put this together. So tell us a little bit about that. Like what made you do this?
The Robin Hood series, because I made the rhinos and the hippos, but I used the Toy Forge fat belly half giant torso.
Gotcha. So you had a bunch of ogre torsos, and you're like, "What am I going to do with this?"
I had all these torsos lying around, and I don't know. I think we're both chatty, and this will run long if we let it. But I knew you had also pulled my Mr. Caterpillar from Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, that's the last slide. Yep,
as a slide, and I was like, well, I could Mr. Caterpillar it, and just take these 4 torsos and make a giant worm, and then it wasn't quite big enough. So, and that was. Still, this thing's huge. And then I had this Star Wars thing, and I really should find out what it was. But it was this. I don't know if you have a picture of. Oh wait, I've got it right here.
I have a picture of the back now.
So I've got the back right here.
All right.
With a skeleton crawling
back. Yeah.
Skeleton crawling out of the butt. But this thing was
which I actually remember you messaging a couple of us and just being like, hey, should I make the opening go outward or should I turn it the other way? And we're like, definitely outward. You gotta have the open butt at the end, so yeah, just so it's like you have this vision, you have these extra parts that you're playing with, you're bouncing things off other people, you're reaching out to the community for certain parts. Like it really is like this whole process that goes into this.
Oh yeah, like this thing has been on my desk for 4 or 5 months before it's done.
Yeah. And then little tiny fairy wings at the end, because why not? Right? And again, giant monstrosity with the open butt and a skeleton coming out of his butt. Let's put little fairy wings on him.
Yeah, and what I didn't do here, and the parts are made, I can just slap them on there, but and you said you see a head, and it's not just a head. And with this piece, I did want to kind of cover up the pectoral muscles on the back. I just felt like it didn't look wormy enough to have nipples.
Gotcha.
And so because I did the spikes coming out of the back from the half giant accessory kit, I thought I could continue that theme, and I took the head from one of the I think it's a dwarf. It might be a barbarian. I'm not sure, but it has the holes for horns right here, and then the beard. Ripped off the beard, cut the face in half, and then
dwarf fans everywhere just cried a little bit, just so you know. There are plenty of small tears right now.
I did it to 3 of them. And then you could cover the pectoral muscles and have horns coming out. And it looks awesome, but it was just like with some of these projects, you just got to take a step back and be like, this is done enough, right? Like,
yeah, like how far is far enough and how far is too far, kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah. Very nice. Well, we do have actually I think I have. Oh, you know what? I think I might have missed the Mr. Caterpillar on here, but that's a great one. I think, kind of structural wise, kind of similar to that last one. This is the last one I wanted to pull up because to me, listen, I know you got a lot of stuff that gets a lot of, praise and eyes on it and this and that. This to me is Nate Armstrong. Like I just look at this and I go, like antlers from the helmet for arms. You got a part of a helmet as a torso, like trying to create a snowman. Like this is, tell us a little bit about this, because this just looks like you sitting there playing and having fun.
Yeah, this is me going, I'm spending a lot of time doing this, which is time away from the family. I should probably make my daughters something. Yeah. And I was like, well, they love Frozen. I could do an Anna and Elsa. And for those of you who saw my Robin Hood at Legion's Con, it's pretty comprehensive. And so I have a problem where I can't just do a figure. So I was like, well, if I do that, then I got to do Kristoff and I got to do Sven. And then Olaf, how would you do Olaf? And so that's how I didn't actually finish this and do it. But I wanted to prove that it could be done. And I wanted to start a conversation in the community about throw something at me, throw some complicated thing that looks like it would never belong in Mythic Legions, and let's see what we can do with it. So this is just a what if.
The thing that I love about this, and I think it ties the whole conversation together, is like if you were to take all the colors out of this thing to the right, you take all the colors out of it, you maybe even kind of sand down or kind of in your mind, like forget about the textures and just look at the overall silhouette. You look at the shape and you go, oh yeah, those are like stick arms, and you got like a little carrot nose there, and you got like this is a snowman, like without it even being painted, without it being green stuff to fill in the gaps and cover up some of the textures and all this and that. Like you can see the thing coming together. And even though this isn't a finished piece, I thought this was a great one to end on, because this just kind of shows how you do it, how you play and come up with things and just throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. And it's really a beautiful thing, man.
Nice. Thank you. And I invite you all, let's play, like have some of these challenges. I want to see somebody else build a snowman. Let's build a snowman.
And if you've created something, maybe sometimes you're popping and swapping. Maybe you just got a figure that has a bunch of extra parts. Maybe you got like a Fisher Rice and it's got 4 heads and 3 necks and it's got 2 sets of arms and 2 sets of legs. Maybe you bought a Legion's Con 2-pack and it's got all these extra parts and you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do with it. Start playing around, see what fits together. So, maybe an arm fits into a leg hole and this and that, and just kind of play around and see what you got.
Absolutely. With Necro coming, all those bone parts, we've got a huge opportunity for this kind of play.
Yeah, I mean, we had a conversation, a few folks on here about Necronominus and just all the different parts coming. And I said, what would be really fun is just to take all of those skeletons. You take Necro himself, Maxilius, Conibus, like all of these skeletons, the Terpiculi, and just break them all up. Like pull every single joint apart and throw it all into a pile of bones, and then just go, okay, what can I make? Like, just start popping things together and create some huge monstrosity. We're going to see some cool stuff. We're going to see, some interesting things from Necro. So
community, please make me lose some sleep. Return the favor.
There you go. Well, this did run a little long. Normally try to do like 20, 30 minutes, but your brain is an interesting place. And I just had to hang out there for a little bit. But thank you for joining me, Nate. Thanks for talking through your process. I'm going to put you backstage. And if you got to run, totally understand. If not, I will be with you after I close out the show here.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, folks. That was a lot of fun. And I'm hoping to do more of that this year myself, is just, not just repaint a figure, not just, paint a head and pop it on and that kind of thing, but really try to come up with some creative solutions to problems. And that's all this is. It's like just thinking outside the box. It's playing, it's partnering with the community, it's a lot of that. So good conversation with Nate. Hope you guys picked up something on that. And most importantly, as with anything in this How'd They Do That series, if you try something new that you picked up or you were inspired by something that Nate said, make sure you tag him, tag myself, the Cabal on Instagram, whatever, so that we can see what you created, because that's what this is about. It's about kind of taking the experiences from these folks, sharing it with you guys, and hopefully inspiring you guys to do something awesome as well. We'd love to see you at Legion's Con with your own table and some really wild stuff that you go, yeah, I did this because, somebody said this and it did that same thing that Emil did for me. It just unlocked something in my brain and I went to town. So, and until next time, folks, keep creating.